Project X Red, latest addition to the lineup of an iconic series of shafts. Project X has been around a good number of years now, and the Red being the latest addition. They've had the original Project X, the IO, the LS, PXI, and this really forms as a progression on some of those models. We'll come on to more of that a little bit later on, but going to hit a few shots of this, get some data, talk about how it feels and the design principles of it, but then also compare it to the IO in the same. We're going to be hitting the 6.0 and the 110 gram, the IO and the 6.0 and the 110 gram, and also the original Project X as well. So give a bit of a comparison in, say, the design principles of it, kind of flight differences you see out of it, how it feels to swing, but also whether it might be something that you want to add to your bag too. So the Project X Red is a bit of a progression on really the PXI. So the design principle of the PXI was still stability in the tip, a little bit more responsive in the grip end, but designed to play that little bit lighter than the standard Project X to get more feedback and a little bit more flight. And the Project X Red is really taking that principle and extending it out a bit more, getting a bit more feedback through the shaft. So one of the things, we tested this originally in Orlando in January and did a bit of a chat on the range there. And there's check out the other video that we've got from that initial test before we had any really of the ability to test it with the numbers. And you get a smoother progression of the flex through the shaft. It really feels like it loads and kicks a little bit more. Project X shafts in the past have generally always been quite firm feeling. The principles behind the original model was very, very stable through that midsection. Technically a bit of kick out the tip, but it's still a very tight feeling shaft that requires a bit more of a hit to get the best out of it. This is really offering a bit of a different principle to that. It's a more moderate loading shaft, a smoother feeling shaft, and something designed to kick it up in the air a little bit more. Whereas historically you'd use that first gen Project X to bring that spin down, let it have a moderate launch, but the theory was really get that spin down and be something that you could hit hard and it stays with you. So going to hit a few of this, get a bit of data. We'll talk about the feel, what you might experience hitting it as well, and really kind of how it might fit into someone's bag. I think the stepless look of the Project X is really something that they've done so well over the years. And it's something that a lot of players really like, but going into lighter shafts, generally you've tended to go into stepped options. So the 5.5 flex, and this is 100 grams, the 6.0 is 110, the 6.5 is 120, so there's quite a up step in terms of weight progression between the flexes. So that does mean that you're very much going to be one or the other. If it was 5 grams, you could slot into a couple of them. And if you wanted to err to something slightly heavier and to be more aggressive with, or slightly lighter to be quieter with these ones, you're definitely going to be in the 100 or the 110 or the 110 or the 120, simply because there's a big change in weight between them. So you're not going to be able to kind of flit slightly between the flexes like we can ordinarily. However, that can be a good thing because it makes it obvious which is the best one. So in terms of how they feel the swing, I'm hitting with the equivalent of my club head on here, my spec. You really do feel that little bit more action through the shaft. It's not a loose feeling shaft, but it's certainly not a shaft that feels like you've got to work it hard to get a result out of. Whereas historically the Project X shafts, you've had to really work that midsection quite hard. I almost feel like you kind of pull on it quite hard and get that load in there to get anything back from it. With this one, I can kind of time it and swing smooth and still feel a little sense of give in the midsection, bit of pop through the bottom end, and up the flight goes, 18.6 launch. I haven't got to work hard to get that feedback, to get that kick out of it. And whilst in the grand scheme of things, the amount the shaft's actually loading, kicking isn't that great, sometimes just getting that bit of sensation out of it can give a player confidence that they haven't got to fight the club for it, which helps you relax and free up a little bit more. And that can often lead to a little bit of a better contact and a bit more flight as well. Whereas if you feel you've got to work it hard, it can make you grip hard and hit at it and actually lose your form and your balance, which is hugely important to consistency. So if we get a couple more shots with this, there's a nice balance to it. It's mid to lower balance point. It's not a heavy swinging shaft. But if you're more of a tempo player, this one's really geared towards more of a mid-launch, mid-spin profile. But for someone who's got a moderate tempo, isn't a massive hitter at the ball, it's a really stable shaft without being harsh. I think as a line extension to the Project X series, it's something that I think even in, yeah, we'll compare it to the IO shortly, but even in the IO series, which, you know, IO stands for individually optimized, as you go in the softer flexes, it can still feel a little hard. You know, this one, there's much more smoothness to it. It's a much more, could argue from a feel point of view, a user-friendly experience. It's a nicer experience to hit. Whereas, you know, the other models, if you're a hitter and you want to feel that tightness at impact, that's where you're going to get the benefit out of those. So having hit a few, we've talked through the feels of it. We've got some data with the other shafts we're going to compare it with, and we'll run through the numbers and how you might choose this shaft versus some of their others. So let's go over the data that we just captured. So obviously we've got the back of our data of the standard Project X 6.0, which is the blue label Project X, and then the IO, which is more the matte finish. So as I said earlier, IO stands for individually optimized. So as it goes through the flexes, as you go from the 5.0 to the 5.5 to the 6.0 to the 6.5, you've got a 5 gram progression, but they get progressively a stiffer profile, so designed to bring flight down as you move up the flexes, which is slightly different than most. Most will retain a similar kind of principle in terms of design, but they just up the weight and up the flex as you go through the flex ranges. So what are we seeing differently? So I've purposefully swung at a kind of moderate tempo, moderate speed, because we're reviewing how the Project X Red performs, and really this is the kind of swing it's designed for, rather than going at it hard. So hence club speed 84, 85, so, you know, strongish, but not a kind of harsh hit at it. So where do the differences lie? So the Project X Red is, say, designed to be a little bit more responsive, to flight a little bit more, to use the mid to lower section of shaft to kick the flight up a touch more. And that is exactly what we're seeing with it. So the ball speeds are within a mile an hour of one another, but we are seeing a degree more launch out of the Project X Red to the PX IO, and a degree and a quarter, 1.4 degrees from the Project X Red to the standard Project X. Now, slight disclaimer with this, the Project X 6.0, whilst it's the same flex, it's 10 grams heavier, it's 120 gram shaft, or just over. So at a moderate tempo, what we generally would expect to see is that shaft is a little harder work, and we can see the results of that in that bottom number here underneath the carry distance. That's the tolerance. So there's a much bigger tolerance on the carry with the standard Project X with this swing style for me than the other two, because at that tempo, if I was working harder, if I was hitting at it more, the heavier weight would suit more. At this sort of tempo and speed, I'm struggling to time it quite as well. So that's also a little bit of an insight into the designs. Standard Project X is designed to be hit at a little bit more and suits a more aggressive swing, whereas the slightly lighter weights of the IO and the Project X Red tend to suit that slightly quieter tempo, more of a rhythm-based swing. So what is marketed of note, let's start trying to find a clever word, but it didn't work. What is of note here is how consistent the spin is with all of these. So it's the same head. I used a mirror blade, which is the same kind of head that I use myself. So there's no tech in it, but very, very consistent spin surrounding those launch angles. So the launch angle is 1.4 degrees higher with the Project X Red to the Project X, but the spin 3 revs difference. So what that goes to show is that the shaft itself doesn't necessarily change the spin profile very much. It can change the launch angles a little bit. And we are seeing, as a result of that launch angle difference, 89 foot for the standard Project X, 94 for the IO, 99 for the Project X Red. So then land angle 48 for the Project X Red, 46.7 for the IO, 45.6 for the Project X. So there are some slight differences there. The Red is helping to get that a little bit more launch angle, but it's not carrying lots of extra spin into it. So where we'd really see this shaft coming into it is if you're someone with a more moderate tempo, more of a kind of rhythm, tempo-based swing, looking to kick the flight up a little bit more, but not necessarily chuck a load of spin onto it. And for that, this has been very, very successful. I think it's something that you do certainly get a bit more flow of the kind of the feel through the shaft is a bit more even through it. The IO it's a little bit of a harder feel. It creates a slightly higher pitch note, and that feeds into the feel. The sound is basically feel. A higher pitch note, a harder sound can feel a little bit harder to hit with, be it from the head or the shaft. And then so the Project X being 10 grams heavier, the standard one, that requires more of a hit at. So the sort of player we'd be looking at this for is someone who needs that kind of mid to lighter mid-weight. Sort of, I think the 110 or the 100s are going to be the most popular weights in this. And really, I feel like that's predominantly where the design orientation was. The 120 just gives that slightly heavier, stiffer kind of comparison point for the stronger swinger, more of a kind of tour style shaft. But I think we're going to see ourselves using the 110 and the 100 gram, the 5.5 and the 6.0 flexes most with this shaft. But that little bit of help with launch angle and smooth feel, really nice. Just a shaft where it kind of completes the line up a little bit more, really nice addition to the line. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense of the design principles and how that feeds into results. It's always nice when what they've tried to do correlates to the results as well. It doesn't always happen. But if you like the review, hit the like button, subscribe, let us know some other products you'd like us to test out. We'll do some comparisons like this. Hopefully help me give you some answers about why this shaft might be something you want to consider for your game.